Hello everyone and welcome back. It's not this day in history, no. It is the state of the race. I wish I had a graphic that threw an elephant and a donkey across and was like, boom, the state of the race. But we don't have that here, so you're just going to get me. This is a video I've been looking forward to all week. It's going to be the first of two videos that we do today. It will be the shorter of the two that I do because we're going to be talking about the state of the race. And the state of the race for president. This is not a prediction video. This is just how I see the race at the moment currently. We'll have prediction videos when we get closer to Iowa, New Hampshire, Super Tuesday 2, and if the primary goes on past that, for each subsequent primary. I'm going to have a reaction video this week to the debate coming up. That will probably be the day after. I might put it up that night right after the debate to get my instant thoughts. But that will be coming up soon. So, the state of the race. Let's start with the Republicans, and under no realistic circumstance is Donald Trump not going to be the Republican nominee for president. Donald Trump, is the current incumbent president, is going to be the Republican nominee. He has an 86% approval rating among Republicans according to the latest Reuters poll. And that is a poll I looked at to get this. I know Trump says it's a 95% approval rating. I have no idea where he's getting that number. But the latest Reuters poll shows 86% approval rating among Republicans. That is still massively, massively impressive. And they're locked in. I mean, you see it all the time when Trump says something outrageous or does something against Republican Party orthodoxy. Republican leaders in Congress fall into line because they know in an instant Donald Trump can end their political career with a tweet. He's done it before. He did it to Mark Sanford in South Carolina. He did it to Bob Corker, Jeff Flake. There's a whole list of people that are no longer in politics because of Trump tweets. There's also members of Congress who have retired because they couldn't stand to do it any longer. So that is just a fact of life. Trump's also going to be the Republican nominee because he is a fundraising machine. The Trump campaign, raised $46 million in the fourth quarter of 2019 alone. They have $102 million cash on hand at the end of last year. And the other Republican challengers that are challenging him of a serious, the most that has been raised is by Bill Weld at $2 million. But most of the other candidates are less than $500,000. There's a perennial joke candidate that's running for office in several states under several different party lines that has raised, I believe, $10 million, but we're not considering him for these purposes. Joe Walsh has raised less than $500,000. So Trump's control over the Republican Party is solid. He's also got control over the state parties. This has been one of the underreported things in the Trump presidency, is how meticulously the Trump campaign has targeted state chairmanship races and installed loyalists in those spots. And it's solid. The RNC and the Trump campaign are already fundraising together. There have been several states that have canceled their primaries and caucuses, and the hell with it. They're just going to go ahead and give him the state delegates. And courts have ruled in favor of a Trump campaign on that. So, barring something incredibly damning coming out in the Senate trial, and even that, I don't think, prevents Trump from being the Republican nominee. It would take something just so awful coming out in the Senate trial that they would have to remove him from office is the only way Trump isn't the nominee of the Republican Party. Trump has currently a overall, according to Real Clear Politics, approval-disapproval rating of 52.9 disapproval, 44.8 disapproval. So, he's underwater. And, of course, he is 73. We'll comment more on what I think his favorabilities are and unfavorabilities are later when I do a more broad picture of the whole race once he gets an opponent. But my view of this is until the Republican convention and the Democrats get a nominee, Trump's just going to continue to raise cash and hit all of the Democrats, and just that's going to be his MO until he gets a actual opponent and not a grab bag. Now we're on to the Democrats. This is going to be some of the lesser candidates, and I don't mean lesser in the office they hold. I mean just lesser candidates that are not polling well, not generating media attention, and are not really serious contenders in the early states. Michael, with one exception, Bloomberg. He will be in the second video. Michael Bennet. Bennet is the senator from Colorado. He was appointed to the Senate in 2009 after Senator Salazar resigned to become Obama's Interior Secretary in Obama's first term. He was the Denver Public School Superintendent before that time. From 2005 to 2009, so 4 years he was the superintendent of Denver city schools. He's more of a moderate voice in the race, kind of a more calm, soft-spoken candidate who is talking about achievable goals, and that is not really what voters are looking for in this election. He's preaching more of a what's achievable goal. He made the first 2 debates, but he's not made any more after that. He's failed to raise over $5 million, so his fundraising has not been impressive at all. And the impeachment trial is likely to be fatal to his campaign. He's going to have to be in Washington 6 days a week. And going back and forth between Iowa and New Hampshire is going to be almost an impossibility with the limited cash he has, and just would be a very straining experience on the candidate and on funds. When he's not generating media attention and he's not well funded. So I really think that once that trial gets underway, that Bennet will probably see the writing on the wall and drop out. He is young. He is 55. He can run again. He has nothing to be ashamed of. He has not had any major embarrassments. But I think maybe it's time for him to take a real stock of the campaign and say, I gave it a good try. His RCP average right now is 0.2. He is not registering at all in any national polls. He's registering so low that RCP doesn't even have him on the main line, and they have John Delaney on there. So he's polling below John Delaney in terms of numbers. So maybe it's time for him to go back to the Senate, because he has talked a lot about that in the campaign, that all of these ideals that the candidates, he says, they're great ideals. He says you're fighting for good things, but unless you take back the Senate, it's not going to matter. And I think, should make that his primary concern, is helping the Democratic Party retake control of the Senate. John Delaney. Delaney announced his run back in July of 2017. Yes, 2017. He was the first candidate in the race. He is largely self-funded. He is qualified for the first 2 debates, but hasn't qualified for any others. He has had a very pound-the-ground campaign. He's been to all 99 counties in Iowa. He's been to New Hampshire a lot. He's very much on the ground in those 2 states. He rarely registers on national polls or even in those state polls. And he really faces a problem that most people that are running as U.S. representatives for president, the last person to be directly elected from the House to the presidency was James Garfield in 1880. And not even Delaney would be directly elected from the House. He's retired. He has left politics. The last person to have retired from the House and not held any other elected office after leaving the House to the presidency was Abraham Lincoln. So that is a long, long climb. The last person to be elected from the House of Representatives, directly from the House, to a national ticket was John Garner in 1932. He was Speaker of the House and got elected Vice President with FDR. Ford was never elected on a national ticket. Ford was appointed Vice President after the resignation of Spiro Agnew, was confirmed as Vice President, and then was ascended to the presidency after the resignation of Richard Nixon in 1974, and lost his election for president in 76. He's also failed to excite media attention. And that's kind of strange in Delaney's case, because he represented an area close to Washington, D.C. In the House. But he is a self-funder. I don't think that Delaney has anything to worry about staying in this race through the end of Iowa and possibly even New Hampshire. He got in early. He should be commended for his perseverance and putting his money where his mouth is, because this has been a long campaign for Delaney, and he should at least see it out to that end, considering how long he's been in the race. His RCP average is 0.8%. So almost right at 1% nationally, according to RCP. And he is 56 years old. So maybe one day after this, he runs for governor of Maryland, or runs to reclaim a seat in the House of Representatives, or even the Senate one day. So he's still very young, and could have a future ahead in politics. This next candidate, boy, she's a lightning rod for controversy. Let me tell you what. Tulsi Gabbard. She entered the race in January of 2019. She has hovered around the 1 to 3% range most of the race. There's been times where she got up around 4, but that was very short-lived. A Sanders supporter in 2016 who refused to endorse Hillary Clinton after all of the emails from the Clinton campaign were hacked by Russia. She was also considered for a cabinet position under the current administration. Some reports say Secretary of State. The vetting documents that Axios uncovered earlier in 2019 suggest Veterans Affairs. She has met with Bashar Assad in Damascus, has refused to call him out for gassing children. She has refused to condemn Putin for Russian interference in 2016, and also questions the intelligence. She is very skeptical of American intelligence, and part of this goes back to the Iraq War, which she served in. So she has served her country in combat roles. She voted present on the impeachment of Donald Trump. She became the first person ever to vote present in an impeachment vote. She voted present on both articles. And her run is really puzzling, considering that she is eventually going to endorse Sanders, most likely. And she is siphoning voters from him. I know I've said she's got 1 to 4%, or 1 to 3%, but that matters in a race with this many candidates in it. And at the top of the ticket, that is really close. So I'm not sure what her end game is. She is announced that she's all in on this presidential run. So her political career will come to an end on January 3rd, 2020, when she leaves the House of Representatives. She has gotten plenty of media attention. She has picked up some endorsements from unsavory characters. Although she has denounced those, she is still a favorite of some on the alt-right. And she's really not a serious candidate, in my opinion. And, of course, Hillary Clinton had those comments about her being a Russian agent and a favorite of Putin. I think that's unfair, but also she has taken some positions that are very extreme and very peculiar. She also has a history of some associations with some anti-LGBT groups. She has distanced herself from those, but that is still something in her background that those people should be aware of. She's 38, so she has a bright future ahead of her in television news and commentating, most likely on the Fox News Channel or One America News Network. And the last candidate, I hate to put him in this batch of candidates, but he's failed to qualify for the December debate, and he failed to qualify for the January debate, and that is Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. He has all of the charisma of Barack Obama and more. People talk about, and NPR had a story recently about where people at his speech felt the passion in his voice. Some people talked about being brought to tears because of his message. But his message of unity and love and togetherness is not what Democratic voters want to hear in 2020. They want a fighter. I think some of them secretly think that maybe if he got on the debate stage and is talking about unity and love, that Donald Trump would absolutely tear that to shreds. He has been seen as a rising star in the Democratic Party ever since he was elected to the Newark City Council, served as mayor for 7 years of Newark, won election to the Senate in 2013 after the death of Senator Lautenberg. He won a special election in 2013. He won a full term in 2014. And New Jersey law has been changed recently. So if he does get the nomination for president or vice president, he can run for re-election to the Senate and the national ticket. He says he's the only senator that lives in a low-income inner-city community in Newark. He grew up in a wealthy suburb, but as mayor, moved to a lower-income community to experience life in that part of the world. He is a graduate of Stanford University. He received a bachelor's degree from Stanford and a master's degree. He played football at Stanford. He was on the all-academic Pac-10 team. He is a Rhodes Scholar. He has a master's degree as well from Oxford and has a law degree from Yale. He's young. He's 50. He will turn 51 over the summer. And he has even said that a Senate impeachment trial is likely to be fatal to his campaign. And I tend to agree. I think he's in the same boat as Bennett is, because I just don't think he's going to have the resources to stay competitive in any of the early states where he needs to. And he really I've thought for a long time his strategy is to try to make it to South Carolina and have a strong showing there. But he's got to have a strong or decent showing in Iowa and New Hampshire to make that possible. And at the moment, the polls just do not show that occurring. And we had that shock poll out of South Carolina that showed Tom Steyer in second place with Joe Biden running away. Obviously, we knew Joe Biden was going to be running away with it, but that second place by Tom Steyer was really startling, and I think it should have been even more startling for the Booker campaign. So, as I said, he's 50 years old. He has a long career ahead of him. He could definitely run for national office again. He could stay in the Senate and fight for the values he believes in the Senate. And he could even be a part of a national ticket this year as a vice presidential candidate. I think that he's had a good showing thus far. Although the poll numbers don't show it, I think he's had a respectable run. and has nothing to be ashamed of because of his run for president. Keep an eye on Cory Booker. As I said, I hated to put him in this batch, but he's not moving the needle. He's not raising funds. And it's sad because he's a good candidate on paper, but you've got to raise money and you got to move those poll numbers. I'll be back later with the more top tier candidates. We've got Mayor Pete, Joe, Bernie, Elizabeth, Andrew Yang, Tom Steyer, and Michael Bloomberg. The top tier candidates that are really going to be the ones to be reckoned with. I put Amy in that batch. I know she's polling low, but Iowa could be a make or break state for Klobuchar. And so that's why she's in that batch. I'll see you later.